All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thirsty Thursday number 41. Holy cow. That's quite an impressive feat. Uh, my first time back in probably a month and a half. One, it's good to see you guys. Trevor, I know it's been a while. Bobby, I saw you like last week. But still love you. Good to see you. Mike is on his way home from one firehouse to get home to jump on and join us. And last or 2 weeks ago, we talked with Lieutenant Basil Abraham from Orlando, who is presenting at FDIC. So this week, we want to talk. Mike was fortunate enough to be able to go to FDIC. So we'll talk with Mike about some of the things that he learned out there. Get some group conversation about other stuff that we have picked up and learned from previous conferences. Because one of the big things about going to a conference is, what are you bringing back? What are you doing to, one, make yourself better, but two, make your department better? Everything I've always learned about when you go places like that one of the most important things that you can do is bring it back and share it with your department. So with that being said, let's catch up a little bit about like what we've been up to. Because like I said, it's been a while since I've been on, and just kind of hear and see what Mike and Bobby and Trevor have been up to. And there he is. Look at that guy.
Hey guys, sorry about that.
It's all good, man. Is that the? Yeah, you're still in that fancy shirt, aren't you?
I am. I still got it on.
Nice. Cheers.
Oh,
I'm sorry, guys. Hang on a second.
Is that Mark?
Cheers.
Is that Mark Wahlberg? That's. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Mike Wood. I'm sorry. I thought it was Mike. That's our guest for later on. I'm sorry. I thought it was Mark Wahlberg. Never mind.
Cheers, brothers. Good to see you guys again.
Cheers, guys. Sorry, I'm late.
No worries.
Hey, early is on time.
I just did the intro. We're gonna, kind of kick it around and talk about some of the things we've been up to since the last time I've been on, which is probably around a month and a half. And then, like I said, we talk about what you had picked up from FDIC, and then what we had picked up from other previous conferences that we may have been to that we really enjoyed, and just kind of go where the evening takes us.
Absolutely.
So, who wants to go first? Go ahead, Trevor.
Actually, thanks, Ben. And it is good to be back. I know we've had a little bit of a hiatus here and there, and as Bobby can probably attest to, because him and I have had the privilege of teaching a lot of places around the country. Anytime that you go to a conference, whether you're an instructor or a student, you pick something up. And I think that the after hours integration is just as valuable, if not sometimes more so, than the actual classroom, because you have a chance to talk to people in a very unstructured and informal way. And Bobby, he can attest to this as well, that anytime that we go somewhere to quote unquote teach a class, we go there to share information. We're not there to tell anybody anything, or we're not saying we're going to make you better and tell you how to solve all the world's problems, but we're going to share what we know. We share what we don't know, but also bring in that requisite knowledge from the local area, which I think is so imperative to what goes on. And this is the first year in probably 2.5 decades that I haven't been out to FDIC. And part of it I know has changed. That's where I want to get Mike's input on this as well. Is way back in the day when FDIC, when I first started going out there, it was truly a fire department instructors conference. You had maybe 5,000, 7,500, up to 10,000 people, maybe. But they were all fire service instructors. They were all training officers. There's somebody who had a vested interest in training. And I understand that there's a business model as well that says, okay, let's start to include people in at varying levels, because instead of being at that advanced level, we have intermediate and basic. And that's what they actually touted and advertised their classes as. And then this year, which was a complete, I think, different direction from what they've done, for whatever reason, they also incorporated a EMS conference, the GEMS conference, which I think was very interesting, and probably from a business standpoint probably did fairly well. There's the good and bad and the ugly with it, but I really want to hear the feedback from some folks. But nevertheless, I think you have 2 basic responses to people to go to conferences, or 3. One, you have the people to go to conferences and they come back and they're a parrot, and they'll regurgitate whatever was said at the conference, but they have no idea what the meaning of what was taught. and they just come back and say, okay, I've touched my base to say I'm giving my return on investment. You have the other folks that don't realize what they learned at the conference has to be metered and measured and applied to their local jurisdiction, because just as our brother Ray McCormick will say, hey, I work on a 5-man engine company. That's great, but how many of y'all work on that 5-man engine company? So take what I teach you and be able to address that to a 3, 2, and maybe even a 1-person engine company, if you will. And then you have the others that want to come back and change every single thing and don't understand the why behind what they do. And sometimes the why behind what you do in your department is ingrained in good logical tactics. Other times it's that crap that, well, we've done this for the last 60 years and we're not going to change it now. So it's trying to find that balance, and also, like you had said, Ben, earlier, bringing back that information and then trying to apply it to the local jurisdiction the best you can, but also not getting frustrated and discouraged when you have the people who want to fight you tooth and nail about these new ideas. And sometimes new ideas are good. Sometimes they might not totally apply, but you send people away to these conferences for a reason. Take the information and try to adapt it to your local jurisdiction and the knowledge base there, and make it work for your own good. And that person who brings back the information might not have the grand title or the glitter shit on their collar, but listen to what they have to say. Get that return on return on investment, and bring some of those things back, and then see how see how it can potentially benefit your department. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox for now and kick it over to Bobby, and then Mike, and then we'll go from there. So Bobby, go for it.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Welcome back, Mike. Good to see you, buddy. When I started in the fire service in the late 80s, there was no real networking going on except for FDIC. That was the only place where people even really kind of compared notes. Each jurisdiction kind of went on their own way. Back then, we had very little mutual aid. Most everybody stayed within their cities or towns or jurisdictions and all that. It was my dog serenading me with a ball. But anyways, I remember in 2000-ish or so, when the internet started gaining popularity, people began comparing notes. And I remember I went out to FDIC back then, and I said, I'll do a RIT competition challenge. Well, I had really not trained much on anything RIT. RIT was actually a fairly new concept back then. But I said, hey, how bad can it be? And, I got into those scenarios where I didn't know. And that was the thing that FDIC does to you, is it takes what you don't know and it shows it to you. And so putting effort into training over all the years, luckily not a whole lot of stuff surprises me as much anymore. But there's always something new that you learn when you go to these different conferences and things like that. So, and it really re-energizes my bat. Trevor, you gave this to me. It re-energizes my batteries when we go to places like that, because, I hate, and I just got to speak about work. At work, it's like 80% of the guys seem like they don't want to be there when you're doing training. And when you go to FDIC, it's like 80% of the guys want to be there. And that switch is really fun to do. So with this dog going in my background, I'm going to let Mike go. Talk a little bit about your FDIC journey, brother.
Well, how's it going, guys? Thanks again. And it's been a while. I'm glad to be back. I saw a movie, Bobby, where this dog got the squeaky toy stuck in its throat. And so every time it made a noise, it was just a squeak, man. I don't know.
It's my world, man.
Well, to piggyback on that, man, I saw that cool tool out at FDIC. It's called a life vac. So you can suck that toy right out of his throat, man, and you'll be back in business. But so yeah, I'll tell you, I was overwhelmed, man. It was incredible, and it was like I was a kid at Christmas time. I did not have enough time there. I really needed probably the whole week with everything that I got to see and being able to talk to people, and especially if you go out there with some type of agenda, there is just so much. And to piggyback on what Trevor said, a lot of departments send out, these groups of guys to go out there, and obviously normally they have an agenda and things like that. But I'll tell you, departments should definitely be tapping that. I think a little bit harder by, and if you're going to front the money to send these guys out, be they training officers or other officers or even administration, they should return back to their departments and be given an allotted amount of time to maybe put together some PowerPoints or some hands-on activities and actually showcase kind of what they learned and bring that stuff back to the department, that they are aligned with, because the amount of information that's out there and the value behind so much of it, I mean, it's priceless. And I'll tell you, now I had never seen anything like it. And with the gems being there now, obviously there was heavy EMS. And I got to tell you, like, one thing that really blew my mind out there was the amount of special operations areas that I saw. I was not anticipating seeing that, and there was so many setups and vendors and basically just areas that were sectioned off for special operations command, and everything from high angle to trench to you name it. It was amazing. And then, of course, there was the Marine side of it, which I didn't anticipate seeing the amount of effort and material that was put into that. I couldn't believe how many different things were set up, aligning themselves with the Marine side of departments. Everything from fire boats to rapid diver equipment to, of course, your regular dive team to, your various types of personnel boats and patient systems to load. It was incredible, man. It was absolutely incredible. So it really was, like a Christmas for a kid like me. I could have stayed there for weeks on end and chatting people up, and I really wasn't sure what to expect with the coming of the EMS side of it, and of course knowing a couple of people that were teaching out there. I was curious as to how that was going to be, but I'll tell you, there's just so much to take away from it, and there's so much value in it, and just like Bobby said, walking into a place like that and realizing that better than 50% of the people there are fielding the same vision that you are, and they're just huge advocates and students of the trade and want to learn everything they can. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that there's plenty of tire kickers there too, but I did not get that impression by the majority of the people there. And that's something I think that puts momentum back in your sales, and puts that wind back. Just like Bobby said, when you go to work, sometimes it can be taken out. But, you go to a place like that and you realize that our profession is so, heavily loved, and it has so many people that just want to help it progress. And it's incredible to see. It really is.
Yeah, and Mike, that's always been my big infatuation with FDIC and any conferences we go to. And to Bobby's point, I mean, we've taught a lot of classes. I mean, all of us on this screen, and sometimes you have the 10% of the people there that really want to gain and learn, and then the other 90% of the people are like, "Hey, sign my overtime slip and let me out of here." And the first question out of their mouth is, "When do we break for lunch?" And then the second question is, "When are we done for today?" But when you go to these conferences, I mean, it's this epiphany that, wow, there's 30, 40, 50,000 other firefighters in this country and around the world, not just in this country, that are on the same wavelength as I am. And it really kind of re-energizes you and recharges you. And we've been fortunate to have been picked up to go back out to Wichita Hot, which is kind of like a mini FDIC, in my opinion, because even though it's more of a regional school, they draw some people from far and wide in Wichita, and it's kind of interesting to see over the years. I mean, just getting some of the text messages and emails and everything else that, here's some guys that 15, 16, 20 years ago, were really struggling in their careers, and now these are leaders in their industry, and they're like, "Hey, man, do you remember that class you guys did? Remember this? Remember that?" And I mean, it's very redeeming, but at the same time, it's meaningful that no matter whether it's something that we did today or 10, 15, 20 years ago, it might have had an impact on somebody's career and the way that and the outlook that they had. And Mike, I agree with you. It's just one of those things that when you're out there and you have that spirit of people that they're there because they want to make their industry better and they want to become masters of their trade. And it's just that whole dynamic really energizes you for the next several months. And unfortunately, we get back into our routine, in our home departments, and you can get de-energized pretty quick. But that's why I think it's so great that as an instructional group like we are, that we keep each other motivated. And I know there's times when if I'm having some dark days or weeks or months dealing with something, I can talk to any one of you guys, and you're like, "Oh my God, the other day we had this training; it was so great," and it kicks back into your mind, why we're here. So with that, Bobby, did you go to FDIC this year? Were you out there? But Mike, I mean, I want to hear from what you took, and also I'll kind of lead off with this. I understand a lot of departments want to get a return on investment. I'm the same way. If I send my people to a conference, I want to get a certain ROI. And if we have a big ticket item, let's say it's accountability, incident command, RIT, whatever it is, I want to send them. But I also have a problem with completely hobbling my folks and saying, "Okay, Mike, I'm going to send you out there, but every class you take must be RIT oriented." If that's my focus and my priority, that's fine. But I think I sell you short as not only personal development but department development if I pigeonhole you into one category. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll tell you, I was fortunate because I went out there with an assistant chief of Ocean City, and he took great care of me. He did not hamstring me at all. He actually essentially sent me out there and cut me loose and said, "Listen, you don't have to shadow me. Go do your thing. I fully trust what you're going to look into." And he was just a prince, man. So I was coming from a course over the last few months of what's occurred up in Baltimore. I went out there with a frame of mind of wanting to dig deeper, into what we are doing collectively for firefighter emergencies. And a lot of all the time we say that, and we of course we say RIT, but moreover that what we're doing as far as training our individuals, not necessarily training RIT teams, not necessarily trying to outfit RIT teams with specialty tools or things of that nature, but the training that's going into the man in order to mitigate those emergencies without that RIT activation, tools related to that, strategies and tactics related to that. And that was kind of at the top of my list for that. And surprisingly, there was a lot of information out there that was really valuable, down to, some different tactics that pipemen were doing, since they're incurring a lot of these Mayday emergencies, some different tools that they might carry, or some different considerations as to how they tactically move throughout a dwelling, depending on, the occupancy type and the construction. And I found that very interesting because I don't really dwell in the engine world heavily. And, so all that stuff is all gold to me, to hear that, because I don't know, that's not something that I've been privy to do a lot, is be on that nozzle. So understanding kind of some of the different things that those guys are doing and addressing. And then also being able to talk shop with, people that are actually doing the teaching out there, some of the traditions guys, and getting an idea of some of their mindsets when it pertains to those firefighter emergencies. I'll tell you that it's just, I could talk to those, I could talk to people like that for days. And Bobby knows that, because he kind of brings me back on an even keel a lot when I'm having some some rough thoughts at work. And, he's one of the first people I call up and say, listen, man, like, this is what's happening. Here's where my head's at. And he'll, he kind of steers the compass a little bit and gives me that woosah moment. But, you got to have guys like that around you. And, just like you said, man, we could talk amongst ourselves for hours about all these things. And that's the beauty of it. And, that's what was occurring out there, a whole lot.
Yeah. And Mike, I agree with you because, I mean, a lot of it, like you just said, and I want to get Bobby and Ben to chime in on this as well. But, we rely on each other, not only as functional parts of an engine company, a truck company, a battalion, a shift, whatever the case is, but also to kind of level ourselves out. And, I'm the same way with you and Bobby and Ben and some other of our brothers and sisters in the fire service where there's times I need a course correction. And, I'm going down a certain direction that in my mind is the right way to go. But I got my blinders on and I need to get that input from, elsewhere, whether it's, through FDIC and other conference or even the brothers and sisters or, some of the people on the screen here. So, Bobby and Ben, with that being said, let's talk about course corrections here for a minute, because I know we all get frustrated with the minutia of the individual stuff that goes on in a department, but how do we refocus things so that we're mission specific and we get the job done well and not just dwell on our own muck and mire and everything else we have going on.
You want to go first, Bobby? Okay. I can tell you one of the things for me, and I think some of it has to do with the fact that I left another career, and I'm 8 months into this one now, 9 months into this, into being a career fireman, and just the love I have for what I do now. Like you get in there and you start hearing people bitching about, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's Mondays, we got to, whatever the Monday checks are, it's the third, so we have to do the detail check of this piece of equipment and all this and that. And we got to mop the floors, and nobody's happy that you mop the floors and somebody just walks over it with dirty boots. Like, you know what? Like, there are worse places to work. There are worse places. There are worse things to do. Like the job that we get to do is fantastic. Like, we are one of the most trusted public servants, like, that there are. Like, when the cops show up, people are pissed. Nobody, or rarely, are pissed when the firemen show up because we're there to help. They called for us to come out there, so that's one of the things that I really try to focus on is that, there's a lot of dumb shit, a lot of bullshit that we have to do every day. But you know what? At the end of the day, like, it's the best job in the world. Tommy Kane told me that when I got hired, and it's something that one of the things that I'll never forget from him. That and positive customer service. Every time that we would leave the firehouse, he'd always say that. But it's the best job in the world. Like, so you can get hung up and you can get stuck on all of that minutia and all the little stuff that we have to do outside of why we're there. But you know what? Like, that's only a part of your day. It's only part of your shift. Because when you go and you get on the ambulance, you get on the fire truck and you get to do your job, like, that's what it's all about. Taking care of that person, taking care of those people, that house, whatever it is. Like, if you don't get some pleasure out of that, you need to get the fuck out. Like, it is what it is. Like, that's why we're there. So that's one of the things that I have really used. And again, I think that's coming, like, being newer into being a full-time career firefighter. And I think, one of the other things that we've talked about and Bobby and Trevor and Mike have all mentioned it is, when you teach and whatever you're teaching, like, that helps recharge your batteries for the people that want to be there. They mentioned, at your department, it might be 80% of the people are only concerned about what time's lunch, what time are we leaving. You go to FDIC and it's the opposite. Well, in our firehouses, and with your crew, like, you can pick the people that want to be there and that want to train, right? Or if you go out and you start training on a piece of equipment, you go out and you practice forcing doors, you go out and practice pulling lines, the other people that want to train and want to get better, they'll show up. The people that don't, they're going to stay, parked on the couch, not doing anything. But the people that want to get better will come out. So that's something to consider as well. Is what are you doing, and how are we going? How are you making yourself better? And that is going to translate into other people coming out and getting involved too, I think. Sorry, I didn't get the Hickman waiver for the FCC, but we'll be fine.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. When I think about course direction, I can only think about it from my perspective. When I first started in the fire service in a small volunteer fire department here in Millville, Delaware, Dougie Scott was my number one mentor. And Dougie was definitely, he convinced me very early on that it's okay to strive for excellence in a very small and not busy fire department. That was where it all started at, And while he was doing that, there was a couple of really good brothers of mine, Steve Hoovenen and Eric Hoovenen, were in the fire department, and you got in just before I did. And they were big about getting all your classes out of the way. So we went to a state fire school here in Delaware. They talked about getting, all your classes out of the way. So I had a lot of really, really good influences to try to be better at this job. And then as I progressed through the fire service, I started to realize that not everybody shared that same vision that's in the fire service. A lot of people were very much just, what's the minimum I have to do to be here? What benefits do I get out of this? Those types of things. And so my big course direction in this whole thing was, what can you do individually for your fire department is kind of where training comes in. And what you can do individually for a fire department is whether or not you can do a particular skill. Mike teaches some really good forcible entry things for us. And there's very specific things that he teaches. And if you pay attention to him, then you'll have a particular skill that when you go to a fire scene, that's something that you can just do, but the thing is, Mike always started off with the one person forcible entry before he went to two people. So that way, your very first exposure to it through Mike is to do it yourself, because sometimes the people you get paired with and where you end up with, they're just not the people that you want to be there when you're forcing a door, And so my big course correction over the last probably 5 years, maybe, is that you really need to learn the skills specifically for yourself as much as you possibly can, and then apply it back to the team through training. So you try to show other people, they may or may not take it. And one thing I've learned about teaching is nothing more than offering something, and people can take it or leave it. There's no teacher, there's no fire service instructor in the world that when he speaks, it just takes to everybody. It's just not how it works. We just offer something for people to try, and some people latch onto it and they go with it, and some people don't. And the last thing for me is, the beauty about teaching is that you become more educated in the thing. And I've always told guys that want to learn how to be the fire service better, I said, learn how to teach. And then why? I said, because you might learn how to tie a bowline, but when you teach 10 people that don't know how to tie a bowline, it makes you break it down into such a specificity of what you're trying to do. Exactly what is an overhand loop, what is a bite, what is those types of things that you never really think about because you learned it however you learned it. And all of those things have made me end up in the best spot, I believe, in the fire service, and that's as a crew leader or a lieutenant or sergeant, or depends on where you're at, what you call it, but the crew leader, the guy in charge of the rig. Because now, if your guys are good and they can do it, they do it. If they can't, you can step in and help them out and do it. And it's all landed me in a really, really happy spot late in my career, where I'm really, really just happy with what I'm doing. And I love having other guys work around me that can do it without me. And I love, helping them out when they can't. And I love being trusted enough that sometimes when they don't know, they don't feel bad about asking me about it. So, my big course direction is, everybody has to look at this gig. How can I make the fire service better myself through skills, tactics, thought processes, beliefs, whatever. And then the next thing is to offer it up to other people. And not everybody listened to Doug Scott when I listened to Doug Scott, but he offered it to me and I took the ball and I ran with it, and that's kind of what instruction is. And even in FDIC, it's still the same thing. There's just more people that want to take the ball and run with it, which is very refreshing. It's amazing to me how many people are in the fire service that try to figure out how not to engage. We talked to ad nauseum about, transitional attack and these perfect scenarios of nobody takes any risk anymore and things like that. And it's not the fire service I want to be in. I want to take an assumed risk to make a difference to somebody's property or their lives. And that's what this group is about. That's what that group in FDIC is about. And certainly you can just plug it all into EMS too. There's people out there that are leaders in the industry. Sadly, I fall behind in that, but there's people in that industry too, and it all counts. And so my big course direction is look at yourself first before you look at your system failures, because you are the only one that you can fix, and then take yourself when you're fixed and then try to pass it on to other people and offer it up to them, but they have no obligation to take it. So that's been my big course direction in the last 5 years. And it's makes this a really, really great place to be. Love being in the fire service, love doing all the things that we do. And for me, it's made it more satisfying.
And Bobby, if you don't mind me interjecting real quick, that's one of the greatest things I really enjoy and love, teaching with you at all the years that we've been doing this is, we don't agree on everything. We don't see everything through the same lens, but at the same time, and it took me many, many, many years. I mean, literally a month ago tomorrow, I celebrated 35 years in this industry, which I still can't believe when I hear myself say that. But it took me a long, long, long time to discern the difference between, somebody's attitude and somebody's personality. And, for the longest time, I tried to change people's personalities, and that was just a futile effort, because if they were strong-willed, if they were an asshole, whatever the case is, that's who they were as a person. I'm not going to change that. I can influence their attitude while they're on duty and, have them look through a different lens, but I'm not going to change who they are as a person. So if this job is just that, if it's a job to them where they come in from 7A to 7A and, don't do anything more, it was very, very hard for me to accept that. Now, the people who excelled and went past that, those were the people that I certainly tried to reward and would give a better evaluation. I'll kind of digress just real quickly. But, as a younger fire officer, when I had to do evaluations on people, and I looked at the Bobby McGee who came in at 6:15 in the morning and, he had everything checked by 7 and he did this. Oh my God, Bobby, you're my golden child. But the guy who came in, what was their reporting time? 7 a.m. They were there at 6:58. Were they on time? Yes or no? Yes, but nope. Stop, Lieutenant. Were they on time? Yes, they were on time. Did they perform the functions that were required of them? Yes. Did they go beyond that? Oh, hell no, because they're slackers. Okay, going back again, framing it. So yes, they did the minimum that was required of them. And of course, we try to reward those people who do above and beyond. But we had to also try to find that acceptance to say, look, there's people who, to some people, this is a job, to others it's a career, and to others it's a duty and a calling. And try to maintain and manage those different attitudes throughout that, I think has been one of our biggest challenges. And Bobby, I agree with you, is that, we try to find out, how can we be the best at what we're going to do and try to translate that information to other people. And, I've been in the same situation where I've had 90% of the people worried more about me signing their overtime slip than actually learning the content of what we were trying to teach. But I think that it's really infectious, if you will, that when we try to do a better job, or like when, Mike was just out at FDIC and you're, after class. And I think this is one of the best things. I'll use Ray McCormick, our brother, as one of the great examples of this, and Mike Dugan especially, and there's so many more that we can mention. But after the hot training's over and you're sitting at I know it's closed down now, but like you're sitting at the Clod or somewhere, you're having a beer. These are the same instructors that don't stop teaching. If a student comes up these aren't the people saying, "Oh, look, instructions stopped at 5 o'clock." No. I mean, they're drawing stuff out on a cocktail napkin and making sure that you understood the lesson of the day. So they have that, they have that enthrallment, they have that energy that they pass along to others. And Bobby, you're one of those people as well, and all of us here on the screen. But I can just say that when you bring these things up to try to share them, you bring it forth with the full force and gusto that you can possibly give it. If people choose to take that, and this is something that I've kind of, I got this from our building department a while back. I had a person in our building department who I had come up with. I had an issue, and they literally told me, said, "Well, look, have you tried to remedy this situation?" I was like, "Yeah, I did this. And they said, you just got to chuck it in the fuck bucket." I'm like, "Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. Say again." And they said, "Look, if you've gone this far, you've done everything you can within the confines of your ability, and you're doing everything you can. But and here's, there it is. So sometimes you got to sit there and say, hey, not that you don't care, but you just got to, some things you just got to."
Hey, Trevor,
okay, yeah.
Is that big enough?
No, for all the ones that I got to throw out, no. But to kind of end this, I want to go back to Mike. One of the things is that to make sure that whatever we have a passion for, we still bring it no matter how many naysayers are. And Bobby, you remember this? We bring something back from a conference, and what will we get? Oh, who do you boys think you are? You Station 3 boys, you Engine 4 boys, you Ladder 6 boys. You think you're this, you think. But you know what? We did the job, and we did it to the best of our ability, and we didn't mind the naysayers. But guess what? We all became better professionals out of this. So, and I know, Mike, you see these things not only from the Baltimore City perspective, but also the Ocean City perspective. And Ben, you see it in Salisbury versus Ocean City, and Bobby, you see it in Millville in the volunteer-based department versus Ocean City. So, how do you bring these things to bear that we all benefit from it?
Well, before I go into that, Trevor, I love your props, man. You always have a prop handy. And I was struggling to find a Jello pudding box, because you brought up that you just celebrated 35 years, man. That is a long time, and pretty soon that's the only meal you're going to be eating is just pudding, man, because you are getting old, brother.
I'm not going to tell you how old I am. We're not going to talk about that.
But no, you know what? I think about this a lot, because it doesn't matter what department you're in. Do I have that prop? Oh, here, I got something for you, Trevor. I had an assistant show up. There it is. 35 years, baby. I'm sending that to you through the mail.
Put a little Xanax in it to help you sleep.
No, but getting back to it, seriously, it doesn't matter whether you're a part of a busy department or whether you're a part of a department that doesn't get the opportunity to run the fire that they might desire. One thing that does occur on both sides of that is the calls that really kind of take the wind out of your sails. And in busy departments that seem to get a lot of fire, there is, on the flip side of the coin, also a plethora of medical calls that they're dealing with. So there's a point and a counterpoint. And, those type of calls, when they get so redundant, they take a lot of momentum out of people. And, they kind of suppress that morale a little bit. And in your slower departments, it's that, but the opposite. They don't get to run a lot of fire, and they might not run a whole ton of medical calls. So it just becomes a lag, and kind of a sinker that, well, we're just not running anything, and I wish we'd get it. So on both sides, you still have that same morale issue, It just shows up in a different form. And, you know, when we talk about like trying to stay on course and things like that, I go back to, you know, one of the people that influenced my life heavily was my college football coach. And there were times, especially on my senior year, where I would like beg for the ball in certain situations. And he would pull me aside from time to time and say, you know, you are the best person for this particular play, but maybe not the one we're running now. And
Wow.
as someone that was a student of the game, you know, in that spotlight, you always wanted to be in the forefront, you know, and Bobby referred to that earlier, finding that like place in your career where you feel like you are impacting the most. And there are a lot of people that, and I see this up the road a lot in Baltimore, that do really well in a lane and then they leave it for something else. And they're not as influential. And, you know, a lot of that, I feel that way a lot of times. I feel like, you know, my best work is done in the trenches. And going back to, you know, to the statement that my coach said, you don't always get to have the ball, depending on the situation. But one thing to keep in mind, and when I make that reference, is it's kind of like getting that fire. You don't always get to get the fire. But one thing to keep in mind is that collectively, we are all in a certain boat together. If you are a type of fireman that, again, is you know, a student of the trade and wants to be the best and wants to harness your skills and sharpen them, then people that are like-minded like that are all in the same boat together in the sense of how he described football. And that was, you go to the gym, you work out, you run, you lift weights, you watch film, you read, you do this 365 days a year. And for what? And the answer is simply this: you do it for approximately 10 games. That's not 10 days out of your year. That's 10 games. And if you break that down, then a game is about 15-minute quarters, which takes you to 1 hour. So it's not about 10 days. It's not about 10 games. It's about 10 hours. And depending on whether you played offense or defense, just like depending on if you're on an engine company or a truck, you don't play the full hour. You play, maybe if you're lucky, 30 minutes of that game. So when it all shakes out in the end, you worked your ass off for 365 days to become the best that you could be for 5 hours out of a year. 5 hours. Not even a good portion of your day when you think about it. But you work for that. That is ultimately what it comes down to. And when you put it in that light, it's like a little bit, it pulls on them like, I never thought of it that way. But it's sad, but at the same time, it's beautiful that someone is that vested and that dedicated to really put forth that effort over 35 years, Trevor, for those few hours that you get annually. And if you do add it all up, let's say you took 35 years, like, that's not a lot of time out of your life that you've really vested all that in. But that's what this job is about, because at some point in one of those brief periods throughout one of those many games, you might be called upon to make the Hail Mary. You might be called upon to make the play of plays, and that is why we do it. That's the only reason we do it, because it might spotlight you, and it might be your day, and
Hey, Mike.
I take that with me everywhere.
Mike, let me ask you this. And what you said is exceptionally profound. And I mean, I've never heard it put that way. And I mean, I'm going to reference you and use what you just said, prolifically. But you referenced a football coach, a college football coach, telling you, "Hey, look, I need you for a lot of plays, but it might not be this play on this day. But when it's your turn, I need you. I need you to be 110%." That's sometimes a tough pill to swallow for a young go-getter firefighter, paramedic, lieutenant, whatever the case is. Put that in my head. I want you to stick that in my head as an officer. How do I articulate that? Because you figured that out, whether that was through direct communication from your coach, and I don't care whether you're a cap, your title is captain, lieutenant, battalion chief, or coach. It's the same deal. We have to get that across to somebody. So put that in context for me, that if I have that young firefighter, that young lieutenant, that young captain, and just what you said, I mean, that resounds and makes so much sense. But how can I, as an officer, make that make sense to that person so they understand it and don't get demotivated that, oh, well, that battalion chief doesn't see my worth and value. Maybe they do, but not for that exact play. They had somebody else they needed. The way you articulated that was phenomenal. So was that something that you picked up over your time and maturity, or was that something that was articulated to you through your coaching staff? And if not, or if so, how would you do it?
Well, I'll tell you, that was something that came right from the horse's mouth. And he was a phenomenal coach. And a lot of times, speaking on that maturity, you don't recognize what someone's trying to do for you in the heat of the moment. A lot of times it's very easy for us to really just get upset and angry and think that person is trying to suppress, our abilities. I felt that way initially. And you can, just like you said, Trevor, that aligns with our duties as firemen. When you feel like that leash is being pulled back on you a little bit, it isn't because they don't want you to succeed. It's because they see the value of what you bring to the table, but they understand that there is an individual there that can make this play and that can make that play, and we must use our crews and our men for their strengths and understand their weaknesses. And that same message, and as this stands to reason, much like a crew leader, this message was picked up early by our quarterback. And quarterbacks, as you know, they kind of are the field commanders. Our quarterback, his name was Jason Henry. He understood that statement right away, and he was able to wrap his head around that. And he preached that same sermon in the huddle, which resounded to everyone in making them understand that, hey, you're really good at this, and I want you to know that I value your ability here. Your weaknesses are here. Now, I want you to improve your weaknesses, but I want you to also know and have confidence in the fact that when we're faced with this certain problem, you're my guy. And I want you to perfect that strength because you are my go-to guy when we have to deal with A, B, C, and D. And in this realm over here where you are challenged a little bit with different components, this is where I want you to improve. This is where I want you to focus, to try to elevate your game. But I want you to perfect, these areas here, because when it comes time, I'm going to give you the ball for these certain situations. And in other situations, I want you to be a supporting cast member so that we can all have that same vision looking downfield together. Not individuals, but a crew that is all looking at that common goal with the same frame of mind of we are going to do whatever we need to do collectively to get there. So, and I guess that's the only way. I deal best with trying to relate it to that game because I spent so much of my life in it. Although now it's actually equaled itself out. I actually have the same tenure now in the fire service that I did playing football from a child to a young adult. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of parallels there, and there's a lot of life experience learned.
I don't know who wants to follow that up, but it's going to be Bobby or Ben because I got nothing. That was awesome.
I think Mike's comments on being involved in athletics, playing football, that's where my previous career was in athletics, and seeing, I was never the athlete. I learned at a very young age that I sucked at sports, so I opted to be the athletic trainer, the athletic supporter. But everything that Mike said about that is spot on. Like
Mike, you got a prop for that?
I don't know that we can put that on here. that does cross a line that I don't think we can get a waiver for. But seeing things from the other side, more of a, towards the end of my time at Snow Hill, was not only was I responsible for the healthcare and well-being of our student athletes, but I did a lot administratively for our coaches and that kind of stuff. And our good coaches, our great coaches that I got to work with, they had that insight that Mike was talking about and was able to impart that to the student athletes, and to see that was phenomenal. To be able to be a part of that. So absolutely, I totally get that. And the parallel is not having thought about it before, but I mean it's spot on. We train for this, and you train for those calls that you hope you go to, but at the same time, like, you don't. It's always one of those things that, like, you don't want people's stuff to burn and be destroyed, and people have these serious medical issues that we go and take care of. But if you do, if they happen, like, you want to be there. If someone's shit's going to burn, I want to be there. Like if someone's having a heart attack, someone has a medical emergency, like, I don't want that to happen. But when it does, I want to be the guy that people look to, be like, oh man, it's a good thing Waples was there. Like he's on his game. He knows what he's doing. And it's the same thing, when it's Mike's turn to run the ball, like, you want to know that, like, he's put the time in and he's done what he needs to do it effectively. So I think that's a fantastic parallel between the two. So now I'm going to kind of take over the show, and we're going to move this in a different direction. But I think still a similar direction, because again, we're talking about conferences that we're going to, recharging our batteries, and I think it kind of parallels again to when the shit hits the fan, what happens? Who are you counting on? And a lot of times, the people that we're counting on are the people next to us. So the class that we're doing at Wichita, I say we're doing. The class that Strike the Box is doing at Wichita is all about managing the Mayday from the companies on scene in the building with that down firefighter. And I know Bobby put a lot of work into getting the stuff prepped in order to submit, working with Mike and talking with Trevor and talking with retired Lieutenant Ray McCormack to get everything set and ready to go. I was just a lucky guy to be able to hit send and send it off. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know some of what Mike talked about going to FDIC was, rescuing your own. We've talked about RIT and Mayday a lot, and the importance of that. But I don't think we've ever really talked about the importance and the prevalence of the RIT that are resolved by those companies already operating on the fire ground or in that immediate space. So, Bobby, you want to, like I said, you kind of spearheaded this, so you want to give us a little bit more information and kind of take this forward for us.
Sure. To be honest with you, I actually got to give credit to Mike. Mike came up with a study and came to Ocean City with 1,000 successful Maydays where the firefighters survived, and he gave us numbers and he gave us stats, and the really mind blowing stat about it was that was over. What was it? I forget. Mike will talk about it here in a minute, I'm sure, but it was over 80% easy. Of all those successful Maydays were solved by the crew that was having the Mayday or an adjacent crew. And so when we were going through all that, I really thought about, we're really not training for that. We're really not, we're taking RIT and we're putting it in a different box, and we're kind of assuming we're coming from a tarp with all the tools that we need to do everything. And there's Stokes baskets and there's saws and there's hydraulic tools, and when I looked at it, I was like, now the concept of this was just running with what Mike talked about was, what do we do with the stuff we have? What should we have on our own person to get ourselves out of trouble or get our brothers or sisters out of trouble? What do we do for the engine crew and the truck crew's in trouble? What do we do if their truck crew and the engine crew's in trouble? And then even further than that, what does command do? If you lose an engine, then you don't have a first due engine anymore. And what's going to happen with that or a truck? So really, I truly stole it all from Mike and just try to put it together, as to what we can do. And what I'm really excited about is what we did. We teamed up Mike with Trevor because Mike works in a very busy urban department. You've been in truck the whole time, right, Mike? Pretty much, yeah. So Mike's got over 17 years working on a truck in Baltimore City, and Trevor is obviously comes from Ocean City and moved down there, and it's not the same call volume as they have in Baltimore. But Trevor has to deal with much lighter staffing, I guess you could say. And so the other concept was the engine company side of it, which is more kind of my thing. We brought Ray McCormick in. And so Ray McCormick, once again, is in a very, very busy engine company place in FDNY. And it brings me in so we can kind of keep each other in check about, hey, we only got 3 guys on the whole rig. We can't do all that. You know what I mean? Whereas some of the specific techniques and tactics that they're using in the cities are a little bit more tried and true than what we've been thinking about. So hopefully all that goes together into a really cool program where it's like we're not, you're not, a small town in Kansas not being told by FDNY how to handle a Mayday with 60 people. But a firefighter from Oakland, California comes in and is going to get good information from some of the urban firefighters in the group. That was kind of the concept of the whole thing, was recognizing that we're going to most of the time fix it right there in the front lines and kind of putting together a group of people that have different perspectives on what has to happen. Mike, you want to talk a little bit more about the stats that you gave us, because those are really strong.
Yeah, so there was a study done and published roughly 4 years ago that was able to analyze a few thousand Maydays nationwide. And it published there was a lot of really interesting percentages that it put forth, varying from department size all the way to down to the finest points of the individuals that were incurring the Maydays, from your tenure years to your age, and everything in between. So I took a lot of, I read over it numerous times and read different opinions and reviews. And then I decided that, I don't know where everyone always gets their information. You always got to fact check everything. So I took it and applied it to Baltimore and was able to try to dissect some of the firefighter emergencies that we were having to see if it was kind of applicable to some of the things that I read there. And it was. it actually held true for the vast majority of them. So then going a step farther and saying, we spend a lot of time talking about RIT. It's a buzzword, and it's always something that we want to say. How do we improve our RIT? How do we what do they need, and who should they be, and when should they get there, and we're on down the line. What should they carry as far as equipment goes? But unfortunately, we overlooked the fact that it was over 75% of the time, RIT isn't the one mitigating the emergency. It is the crews that are already involved, whether they're interior or whether they're in the immediate vicinity. They are the ones that are solving the emergencies for these Mayday transmissions. So instead of this, blanket focus on RIT teams, how about we focus on the men that are actually solving the problems, and not just focusing on, hey, you're likely to solve this problem. You're likely to run into this problem while you're inside if there is a Mayday, but how can you be better prepared for it? If you're on an engine company, depending on your riding position and your riding assignment on that company, what is likely to happen to you? Look at the statistics. If you're a pipe man and you are consistently going into residential homes that have basements, and if the vast majority of them are single story, you are at the pinnacle of incurring a Mayday. You're the man that is likely to have this befall them. So how do we prep that person? What type of training do we give them so that they understand what is likely to befall them? And everything from how do they tactically advance to what type of maybe additional equipment should they carry on their person? Where does that equipment go on their gear? What are some extra things that they need to be aware of? What are some extra things that they might want to have or might want to consider as far as the equipment that the department gives them, maybe fashioning it in a different way because of what's going to happen or what is likely to happen? And then you take a step farther and say, not only do we want to ready certain people for the likelihood of having the Mayday befall them, but the guys around them, how are they going to be prepared to solve those problems when they happen? Even the ones that are, at the very bottom of the food chain, so to speak, to incur the Mayday, how do we prep them for actually being able to help mitigate it? What do they need to think about as far as when this happens? I need to go get A, B, C, and D off this rig, or I need to do this, that, and the third in order to make sure that this, this removal and recovery is, urgent and expedient. So, and that doesn't just, we're not just talking about engine crews. We're talking about the offense and defense here. We're talking about the truck and the engine and how they come together and both have a very important role, and where those riding positions and those riding assignments play an integral part in making sure that when someone does go down, their response, is one of importance and is one that is going to be, problem solving in that situation. So, that's kind of where my mind goes to it. It backs off of RIT a little bit as far as that RIT crew. And I say that not because there's anything wrong with perfecting your RIT crew, but it's been proven time and time again. And it's been proven in Baltimore, where there is not a whole lot of confidence in the RIT crews because of, whatever that task that they have previously been assigned to. But it's also been proven through data that our RIT teams, when activated, 1 out of 9 incur an additional Mayday. So that's not a good gamble, because then we have really big problems, considering that it takes about a dozen firemen to get one out, one down fireman out. If you incur a second and potentially a third Mayday while you're trying to solve the first one, we got really big problems, So that's where that all comes from. Not to be over, so long-winded.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you talk about traditional RIT training, and you're always talking about that RIT team doing the finding that down fireman, packaging, assessing, all that kind of stuff, the removal. When, like you said, Mike, in reality, and Bobby mentioned this, it's the teams that are already there. So the other thing to look at is, what unit is your RIT team coming from, or what crews is your RIT team coming from? You might get an engine truck chief as your RIT team, but at what point are they assigned on the response? So you're first arriving, 2 engines, 2 trucks, or 3 engines, 2 trucks, whatever it is. They're going to work. They already have assignments. It's that 4th engine, 3rd truck, the longer response time. They're arriving, and the chances of that Mayday occurring are going to occur while that unit is still responding. You don't even have a RIT team set up most of the time when that RIT or when that Mayday is occurring. So, I think the application for this class and the knowledge and content that you guys are going to be sharing is phenomenal. And something that, again, we've talked about, the three of us, and Ray as well. It's kind of, I know it's a little concerning that this hasn't been done before. Again, like we have the data, we know what it takes, and we're still relying on this RIT team that's, again, may not even be on the scene when we're having the Mayday. So, I can tell you it's going to be a great class. I posted in the comments the Wichita Hot website. If anybody's interested in that, it'll be there. When we turn this into a podcast, I'm going to put it in there as well. If you can't go this year, at least continue to check out the Wichita program. They've been big supporters of Strike the Box, and we've been out there before for previous programs. So check them out. From what I've heard, I've not been able to go, but it's always great training, aggressive firefighting training. Definitely check those guys out. We're a little over an hour, so why don't we start thinking about our closing thoughts? We'll kick it around the horn, and then if you guys are good with it, we'll wrap it up and take it out of here. Obviously, if there's something else that we want to mention real quick, we're good too, and we can take that tangent wherever it goes. So let's see. Trevor, you want to go first?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. To kind of dovetail into your comments with what we're teaching out in Wichita, I think the biggest mindset that we need to overcome is the difference between theory and function. A lot of incident commanders, especially newer incident commanders, or those who aren't as comfortable in their own skin, and I don't mean that as any kind of poke in the eye whatsoever, but I get really incensed when people look at that tactical worksheet and they start doing checkbox incident command that, oh, I've got a RIT team. Okay, that's great. Is the RIT team ready to go? Do they have the proper tools? They have the proper function? They have the proper mindset? If there's any firefighters operating above grade level, are there already ladders in place? If not, why not? Who's in charge of that RIT team? It's nice to say that truck 52 is going to be the fast truck or whatever. That's all awesome to make sure that you have your tactical check sheet worked out. But if something happens before truck 52 is in place, or your tactical worksheet is complete, then how are these people going to save themselves? And that's why I think the content of this class really is to say, look, we can't always rely on the fact that RIT is going to be ready to go in place with everybody masked up, and then their backup's going to be 90% ready, and then the backup to the backup is 50% ready. Look, I love Disney, but that's not exactly how we operate in the fire service. So what are we going to do for that first in engine company where things go from sugar to shit in the first 3 to 5 minutes? What are we going to do after that call is over with? And I know, Mike, you've had this instance in the not so distant future in Baltimore City when the call's over with and we really kind of scaled down, and then all of a sudden there's a Mayday situation well after the incident is considered over, and we released a lot of units. So our brothers and sisters who operate, I don't care whether you're in a place like Wichita, which is a city of over 500,000 people, Baltimore City, kind of equivalent if not more, whether you're going in with 3 people on the first line or 33 people on the first line, it doesn't really matter. What are we going to do? What resources are we going to use? And what do we have available? And that's where I think the context of this class comes from, is not only the experience, but also taking a very objective and realistic look at what we can do in the situation at hand, not what we wish we had, but what do we have? And let's operate with that. And I wish I could remember, the quotation, who it came from, but, some people talk about fighting with the army that you want versus the army that you have. And I think it's very important for us to realize that, to say, hey, we could have the crack ace team of RIT folks with the little the wheels on the back of the Stokes basket and the brightly colored tarps, and we have this, and this. That makes no difference to that person who gets tangled up, entrapped, whatever, in those first few critical moments before we have everything on our tactical worksheet. So I want to get people out of that mindset, and kind of to land the plane on this, because I'll go on, if you don't stop me, I'll go on for a long time. But I look at this as our ability to share our experiences with people, like what we do and don't have. One of the greatest travesties I find in the fire service is when you have chief officers or officers tell people in the field that, well, you just don't understand. I'll take care of this. You just don't understand. Well, if they don't understand, then that's because you failed to inform them why things happen. And, I look at a lot of what we do in the fire service, and yes, just like Mike said, there's different plays we need different people for. Sometimes you need to explain that, get over yourself, and don't worry about it. Well, I don't have to explain myself to anybody. Well, sometimes you need to explain yourself so that the crew understands the mission. It's about the mission. It's not about you. So you have to get over yourself very quickly. The other part of this is that, we need to make sure that, overall the crews that are going in to do this, very, very important job, understand the why behind what they're doing. And also, if we tell them that they don't understand, we bring it up to them, maybe not at the time, but later on, to say, and well, I'll kind of back up a little bit. I would look at people in our industry who were leaders in outside of the fire service. They were leaders in business, leaders in industry, leaders in a lot of stuff. People like Dougie Scott. I mean, we can't talk about him enough. And when you would have a battalion chief, an assistant chief, a deputy chief, or a chief say, "Oh, you just don't get it," normally they would have gotten it really well. But the people in charge just didn't want to be challenged, because those people might have brought up some things they never thought of. So the GOY goes a long way. We've got to get over ourselves and realize there's a lot of wisdom in the trenches. Everybody understands that when you look at a flow chart, there's big boxes and then smaller boxes and little boxes. We all know where we fit in that. But at the same time, sometimes you got to invert those to make sure that the mission is taken care of. And I'll leave it at that. We'll put that more on a 360 leadership. But I do appreciate, Mike, your insight and what you brought to it, and especially the parables that you brought forward with the coaching. I think are so valuable for any fire officer. So with that, we're looking forward to going to Wichita and sharing some of this information, and also gleaning some information from the folks out there, because they do just as much the teaching that we do, in my opinion.
Bobby?
I've already said enough. thanks everybody for kind of showing up. If you want to get ready to do the next training, it's the little things that really count. One of my nemesis, we use Scott Pack in Ocean City and in Millville. And one of my nemesis, when they changed that RIC connection, it kind of hides behind a bar. And I still, actually, last week I was sitting in the firehouse, actually practicing hooking it up with fire gloves on. I'll do it in my workouts where your hands are sweaty. You put your fire gloves on with sweaty hands. You do the connection. We just changed how we do large area search a little bit and use a smaller rope. And my zero visibility knot wasn't working. So I sat out in the firehouse and I worked it out with my hands. So all those little things you get ready when whoever's going to go to Wichita and take our class, all those little things will count for you and make the whole experience better. That's what I mean by doing it by yourself. But it's been a great night. It's been fun talk, and everyone, cheers for me.
Cheers, guys.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. You guys have covered it all, and it's good to be back and see everybody's face again, and talking shop. But I couldn't agree more with what all three of you have said. We instead of checking so many boxes, we definitely need to start, wrapping our heads around the fact that we need to put a lot of effort into the men. And them understanding their personal duty and their personal job, depending on what seat they're riding. And, when they arrive on the fire ground, they understand, what that duty is and how to best carry it out, depending on the situation. And then to make them understand, what is likely to befall them or to befall a coworker and how to mitigate that problem. And, we've also touched on the fact that a lot of times we say, a lot of times it is a check the box. Is RIT here? Is the fast truck here? And when they get out of the rigs and they arrive on, the attack side of the building with that same equipment that the department has just kind of, stated that they need to bring, is a set of irons in the RIT bag. Is that what is really necessary, or are we, should we be thinking a little bit farther ahead? Should we be a little more progressive with our thought, depending on the construction of the building we're going in, depending on the severity of the fire, depending on the occupancy type? Because there is a slew of equipment and tactics that change according to, those variables. It isn't always just a RIT bag and forcible entry tools. You just show up and you stand around and you look and you wait for someone to give you the thumbs up and the go ahead or the green light. So, when we speak about those RIT teams, we need to make sure that they understand that they're responsible for far more than just pulling that RIT bag off and a couple hand tools and standing there waiting to be activated. And with the crews that are going in, they need to understand what is likely when that day comes, what's likely to occur and how they are going to respond when that happens and what they need to keep in mind when that happens and what is likely to happen to them, depending on the occupancy type and the construction, so that they're ready and they're able to make decisions in a split second that are going to improve the outcome. So, I think that that's where all this, is aligned. But again, man, it's awesome being able to talk shop with you guys, and I'm really looking forward to Wichita for sure.
Thanks, guys. I'm gonna just kind of wrap it up. I did post or put up one of the pictures from Justin. Mike, I guess you guys work together in the city. Made a great comment. It was pretty long, and I don't think it all displayed on the screen. But one of the things I did want to mention out of his comment was the crews inside already have a better idea of the building layout, which is something that, again, I haven't thought of, but it makes perfect sense. Like the guys coming in, assuming that RIT assignment, like they don't know what the building is. They don't, like, they might know the building, but they don't know how it's laid out. They don't know where, the line is gone for all that stuff, and the crews inside have that knowledge. So that's a great point. Like I said, I, for whatever reason, had never thought of that before. So um, if you guys, like I said, I don't think it all showed up on the screen when I put it up there. Go back, take a look at it, and read it. Again, it's a great post. And then they can have those incoming units, fill in the roles as to suppression or search or whatever else that the companies involved in the Mayday and the RIT are now doing. One of the other things I wanted to mention before we get out of here is, and something that Mike just again made me think of, is that you make the turn and you see the house is on fire, and you get excited and you think, holy shit, yeah, it's on fire, here we go. But you were dispatched for a structure fire. Like, you should make the turn and think that the building is going to be on fire when you get there. So when you make that turn and you see the house is on fire, it's okay. Yes, we're going to work. If you're involved in that and you're coming in and you're being assigned RIT, again, it has to be one of those things that you have the mindset that you're going to have to do that job. It can't be one of those things that, oh shit, like somebody called a Mayday, now we have to do something. Like, one, you're already behind the eight ball. That person is already in trouble. And if you've kind of lollygagged around and you come up with your RIT bag and your Halligan bar and your axe, like, thanks for fucking nothing. Have your stuff together. One of the things that I learned from Scotty Bear, as a retired battalion chief in Annapolis, when he was still riding the suppression equipment, is he was always getting assigned to RIT. And for a while, it pissed him off. Like, he was like, I don't want to do this. I want to go to work. I want to do my job. I want to, be a part of the activities. Until he, sat back or took a step back, looked at it, and really evaluated it, and said, holy shit, like, we have one of the most important responsibilities on the fire ground, and really embraced that. So that now, when he was assigned to RIT, he took pride and ownership of that, and softened the building through ladders, through open windows, did whatever he had to, so that way if they were activated, they were ready. So it was one of those things that, like, if you're being assigned that, or if you are that second arriving engine, the chance of you being that team to affect the firefighter rescue is much greater than that RIT team that's the fourth arriving engine that hasn't even responded yet. So just something to think about. And like I said, a little light bulb went off for me as we were sitting here wrapping this up. So now, as I really wrap this up, again, go check out the Wichita Hot website. It's going to be a great time. The guys I won't be able to go, but again, with Mike, Trevor, Bobby, and Ray, I can guarantee that it's going to be quality education from Strike the Box. And, through the process of submitting our class, I can tell you that the rest of the guys and the rest of the programs at Wichita are going to be phenomenal. So go check those guys out. And if you're able to go out to there, do that. If you are the people that are attending your company training and you're not the one teaching, be part of the 20% that want to be there. All right. It's going to be infectious. It's going to spread. Be a part of the group that wants to be there and do something to make yourself better, which is going to make your department better. So with that, I think we're supposed to be back in 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. Our schedule's been kind of off as of late, but again, as Mike said, it's great getting on here, chatting with you guys. I really appreciate the time, and hope you guys have learned something from our class, and keep watching our social media to see when we're coming back with some more stuff. Also, the 10-second tactics that we're posting on Mondays, we'd love to hear your thoughts and your ideas on what to do with those images. So go ahead and respond on those if you guys want. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and get some more ideas and some more thought processes going. So with that being said, sorry guys, I drank my beer. Cheers. B. McGee, I'll see you in the morning. Mike, I don't know if I'll see you tomorrow. I hope so. It's always a good time hanging out.
Yeah, you will. I'll be there early.
Cool. Trevor, keep it tight.
All right, I got to swat mosquitoes. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't feel bad for you. All right, good night, guys.
Goodbye, Puddin'.